G'day YouTube. This week I'm answering your questions in n8thiest's first ever Q&A episode. I'm Nate and this is n8thiest. n8thiest's first ever And why did I click? That was weird. I'm weird. On this day, the 1st of May, back in 1930, the planet Pluto's name was officially announced. It was a little more than 80 years after the discovery of the planet Neptune, and they had predicted that there would be another planet a little bit further out because of a discrepancy in the orbit of Uranus, or Uranus if you prefer. Now, it turns out that Pluto didn't actually have enough mass to account for this discrepancy. There was no planet X, but rather Neptune's mass had just got a little bit of an error in it. No longer a planet, Pluto was demoted in 2006 to a type of dwarf planet called a Plutoid. This really upset some people, perhaps because of the famous Disney dog by the same name. He was also created in 1930, although he wasn't actually called Pluto for a couple of years. Pluto the X-planet got its name from the Greek god of the underworld. And part of the reason it's no longer a planet is because there are a whole bunch of objects about the same size or even bigger in a similar orbit to Pluto's. Perhaps it's fitting that Pluto shares its name with the god of the underworld and also a dog, since it's going to be spending the rest of its life as a bit of an underdog in our solar system. May the 1st is also the day in America that US President Barack Obama announced that Al-Qaeda leader Osama bin Laden had been killed by US Special Forces in 2011. So perhaps it's appropriate that we start our Q&A episode with a question about the 9/11 attacks and some of those conspiracies that just don't seem to go away. YouTube user SB11677 asked, here's a juicy one. Was 9/11 a conspiracy? 9/11? Massive conspiracy. It involved about 5 years of planning, people from a whole bunch of different countries working in secret to plot the biggest single act of terror that the world has ever seen. I get the feeling though that maybe you're not asking whether or not it was a conspiracy of Al-Qaeda, but rather one of the US government. No. Conspiracy is defined as a secret plan by a group to do something unlawful or harmful, which is exactly what happened. When it comes to US government involvement though, there's just no evidence for it. Anything that conspiracy theorists point at can be explained completely by the official record of events. And you have to believe that those people would have been willing to sacrifice the lives of 2,996 people that day. Never mind the fact that in the nearly 13 years that have followed, they have been okay with the Iraq and Afghanistan wars, which have cost the country more than $5 trillion and the loss of more than twice the number of US military personnel have been killed in those wars than were killed in the original attack. The numbers just don't stack up. Governments just really aren't that good at organising anything, nor keeping it quiet for that long, especially in today's age. Nobody's spoken to a spouse, nobody left a message on a mobile phone, nobody's taken a bit of paper or saved an email. It's pretty unlikely. In fact, about the only way that you can make that work is to invoke another conspiracy. No, I'm joking. There's not two conspiracies. But yes, it was a conspiracy, one that came to light on September the 11th. Conspiracy theorists generally come from the ranks of the illiterati. They're generally not that well versed in the actual events of the day, the context that they were happening in, or the quality of the evidence that can be presented to put down their particular brand of conspiracy. They often only maintain their beliefs by selectively ignoring the evidence that is presented against them, much like pseudoscientists. And that's where I'm going to go for our next question. Skeptic Wars asked, do you believe it's okay to shame groups and people who promote dangerous forms of pseudoscience, i.e. anti-vaccine, AIDS denialism, etc.? Yes, I think hopefully I've made that pretty clear here, but I'd like to talk a little bit more about it. It doesn't make any sense to me. I don't understand how a scientist who's found to be fraudulent or to lie or something similar can be sent to prison or can lose their licenses or can be publicly shamed, whereas somebody who's a psychic and hears voices of ghosts is okay. That's all right to have on television. I think it's important for rational thinkers to call them out on their pseudoscience, especially when it's dangerous, as so many pseudosciences are. It's pretty easy to see the harm that will come from AIDS denialism or anti-vaccination rhetoric. But most pseudoscience can have an element of danger or harm attached to it. I mean, think about the person who chooses to go see a psychic for their sadness rather than a psychiatrist, or a person who chooses to consult the astrology section of the newspaper rather than their accountant, or the person that decides to turn to feng shui to get rid of some bad energies instead of going to the doctor. Plus, in that particular case, you end up with an ugly room where none of the furniture placement makes any sense. I think it's absolutely important to protect our right to free speech and to protect the right of those saying these things to be able to say them. But I do also think it's our responsibility to hold them to account for what they say. If you're lying to somebody, if there's zero evidence for your claims, you shouldn't be making them without making that very, very clear. If you went to a doctor and you had cancer and they gave you nothing to treat it and then you died, you'd want that doctor to go to jail. Maybe not you because you're dead, but your family certainly would. But we don't ask the same of our naturopaths or homeopaths or Ayurvedic medicine practitioners. Just doesn't seem to make any sense to me. Leadership is what's important here. You can't legislate against stupidity, but you can teach people how to avoid it. And I know in my formal education, I didn't actually ever receive a class that said, hey, here's skepticism, here's how to think better. And I really wish that existed. I think that should be our aim. And I think we shouldn't be afraid to take our gloves off and say things the way they are. Just tell it how it is. If anything, I think skeptics really need to find novel ways to really capture people's imagination and show them how exciting the world around us really is and how there's no real need to invoke magic, because already things are just that crazily, insanely awesome that you don't need to invent stuff that's not real. There's way more here already than you'll ever be able to figure out. So have at it. Now, time to lighten things up a little bit. Our last question for this episode comes from Adam Pierce, who asks, which is better for you, still or sparkling water? Always go for sparkling at restaurants because I heard once it absorbs into the body quicker. Is this true? Unfortunately, Adam, no. The way water gets into the body is by osmosis. So you drink some water and it goes into your gut. We have active transportation of things like sodium and potassium across the gut lining, which creates a concentration difference across the membrane, and water is absorbed to try to equalize it. So no, it's not absorbed quicker, but there is some evidence to suggest that it can do you bad. It's a little bit more acidic than normal water, so it can attack tooth enamel, but then it can also apparently help with an upset stomach, though the evidence for both of those seems to be a little bit few and far between. The biggest advantage really seems to be that the fizziness of carbonated water can just make it a bit more fun to drink than normal old water, so you tend to drink a little bit more, which, you know, yay for your body if you're drinking water when you need it. Look, at the end of the day, it doesn't really seem to be that much different from normal water. If you prefer it, have at it. Just make sure you drink it in moderation, just the same as everything else, and you'll have nothing to worry about, except maybe the price. Alrighty, so that's all the time I've got for this week. Big shout out to Sadi Pax and Leslie Palmer for their questions. Unfortunately, I just don't have time to deal with them today. If you have any questions you want to ask, specifically about science or pseudoscience or outlandish claims, please feel free to leave them in the comments below or on any of my videos, and perhaps I'll get to them next time I do a Q&A episode. So, if you like what you've seen, hate what you've seen, or if I got something wrong, please let me know. Leave a comment below or tweet me at n8thburn, that's at the letter N, the number 8, BYRNE, and use the hashtag n8thiest. Subscribe if you want to encourage me to make more videos, and post this wherever you care to share. All the links for everything I've talked about are in the description box below. Thanks again for watching. I'll catch you next time. Alrighty, and that's all the time I have for this week. So big shout out. Can't say big shout out. Big shout out. Big shout out.